Thank you so much for coming on today, Jonathan.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really interesting to get people from different backgrounds on the podcast, and having someone from your level of experience and working in more of a manufacturing space is always really interesting to have on.
No problem.
Yeah, maybe just to start off, would you like to talk to your background as an industrial designer and maybe mention the experiences along the way that really stood out to you that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Um, I went through in the early 90s in the same cohort as Angus Chapman, who you had on
Yeah.
recently. Um, Graduated, started doing some freelance work, which is shorthand for doing whatever I could get my hands on. Um, and worked in a consultancy in Brisbane for a couple of years with Rob Geddes. Then went overseas and worked in the UK for a few years, again, predominantly in consulting type scenarios. And then in the early 2000s, came back to Brisbane. And at that point, I joined Intellidesign. And I've been here ever since, so a long time.
That's great. It's nice to commit yourself to organization. I feel like when you really work hard in an organization, you have a higher level of satisfaction for the success of the organization as well. Mm.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's it's rewarding when you see something grow. So when I joined the company, it was about 7 people.
Mm.
We were in a shed at the back of Ashgrove, and so now we're over 100 people. And when you go through that journey,
Mm.
and it's never a smooth journey. It's a lots of learning opportunities, and to get to the other side, yeah, there's certainly satisfaction in seeing where it's got to.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, maybe to talk more about IntelliDesign. What kind of projects do you take on there, and what different sectors do you work in?
Yeah, sure. So just to be different, I thought I'd sit in production for this, and this is just part of production. So IntelliDesign, so we say that we create game-changing products together. We specialize in the design and manufacture of technically challenging products that go into harsh and demanding environments. And all of the products we do are electronic. In terms of the business here, there's about 30 people in design and engineering. Then we've got a number of support people, and then we've got the bulk of the people in production. And so on site here in Brisbane, we put parts on circuit boards and build circuit boards, which is a bit unique. And where I'm sitting now is our final assembly area, where we integrate the circuit boards into finished product. And so we design the entire product for customers. And it varies the scope for different projects. So some customers come in with 6 bullet points on a page and saying, we've got a problem with this. Can you help us solve it? And then other customers come in with a several 100-page detailed specification, and so I want you to design and manufacture a product to do this.
Mm.
So we rarely sell any of the products that we make to an end customer.
Mm.
So we might make a product for a large multinational, and they distribute it around the world, and it's got their name and badging all over it, GE or something like that. But we've designed it and we manufacture it and continue to support it.
Mm.
As far as the sectors we operate in, we don't do any consumer goods. It's all specialized niche applications. So we do some medical, we do some defense, do some like intelligent transport. There's lots of IoT, particularly in startups at the moment. They're our main, our key sectors. Common thing is that the products are usually going into regulated environments and certainly physically tough environments.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find the experience as being an Australian manufacturer in specifically electronics, which seems like a very, very niche space to me? I don't know. I'm not that well versed in it, but I can imagine that a lot of these services would be offered in more overseas now in Asia. And specifically for electronics, like you must be definitely a bit of a what's the word? I don't know, something rare.
An anomaly.
Bit
Yeah,
of a
yeah,
unicorn, that's right.
yeah. Look, there's a number of companies around Australia making electronic products.
Yep.
Um, and we don't try and compete with the big volume,
Mm.
China. Um, and all of the products that we make are reasonably valuable. And or there is something about them, be it sovereign capability, where the customer really wants to make it onshore.
Mm.
The other aspect is if someone wants to make a product and they're going to make hundreds of thousands of products each year, then that's not for us. We'll make about 60 to 70,000 boards a year that goes into product. So we're by Australian terms, we're a medium manufacturer. By global terms, we're small.
Yeah.
But where we're competitive, or where we really add value, is if you've got a product that you want designed and manufactured, and there are lots of separate parties involved in the development of that product. And if you, the customer, don't have an engineering team to give oversight and drive that development, it can be very hard.
Mm.
You think about, you get your industrial design, your mechanical design, your user stories developed up by somebody. You get your software, your application level software developed by somebody else. You get your driver level software by somebody else. You've got an operating system to develop. And then you get onto the hardware, and you've got hardware to integrate and control. And then you have to bring all of that together and ship a product. Okay, that's not easy, but you do that. But then you get a challenge, you get a problem. You don't find it on unit 1, 2, or 3. It comes up on unit 500.
Mm.
What's the 1 in 5,000 problem? And the source of that problem isn't clear cut.
Mm.
In fact, one of the big challenges is trying to work out what's actually the problem, what's wrong.
Mm.
And if you've got all of these aspects in a complex system developed by different people in different countries all around the world, it can be very, very challenging to get to the bottom of it.
Mm.
And if you as a company don't have the resource, the capacity to throw lots and lots of people at it, that can be a real struggle.
Mm.
Whereas when you contain all of that within one organization, for the customer, it makes it very easy. It's here, I've got a problem. Can you guys sort it? And so you can gather around everybody who's had input into the product and is involved in the design. Could be a build issue, could be a design issue, whatever it is. Usually the good ones are you've got an issue where you've got interactions of all the disciplines going on.
Mm.
You can get all those people together looking at it and dissecting it and understanding the problem. So that's a very attractive thing to our customers.
Mm.
We call it that they've got one throat to choke. It's like, you've got a problem. This is where I go. So
Yeah. I also work for a manufacturing design company, and
Yep.
like the signage sector, and having that kind of in-house role where everything is at your fingertips and everything just happens right in front of you, it's definitely very satisfying.
Yeah. How's the new job going?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
Been good. Yeah.
Learning so much in the manufacturing sector.
Yeah. Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thanks. But no, yeah, I feel like from a design perspective, sometimes a manufacturing role can be less desirable to graduates, for example. Like, the shiny consultancy can sometimes be the choice for a lot of people. But I would say that, like, I have really, really been surprised by how much I've learned in that role, just because there's so many processes going on all the time. It's really just constantly absorb more and more information.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, look, it's um, having worked in both scenarios, so there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to working in both environments. Um, one thing about in manufacturing, when you're working in house, it's all about the parts.
Mm.
Like you go through your work, you build up your design. That's great. You know that's certainly not taking away the importance of that, but the output of your design, the success of your work, it's measured on the parts, and it's measured when it gets used out in the field. When your desk is 20 paces from the place where the parts are going together, it's a really tight feedback loop.
Yeah. Yeah, it can sometimes be daunting because you make a issue, you're going to see the result in a few days, and
Yeah,
like you're going to come straight back to you and be like, "What have you done?"
yeah,
So, like, but at the same time, I feel like being under that pressure can be better because you learn like faster. Whereas if you're kind of disconnected in that consultancy situation, sometimes you might not even get the feedback. They'll just fix the
yeah,
problem before it even gets to you.
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, how great is it? You get things wrong and you learn about it really quick. I
Yeah.
mean, that's awesome. I think that looking back in hindsight, at places I worked when I was younger and jobs I worked on when I was younger, I'm very thankful for the patience of
Definitely.
people who, let me make lots of mistakes and you learn lots of stuff along the way. And I think that's, I get a lot of pleasure when you have a grad and they're starting down and it's like, okay, have a crack at this. It's not going to work first time, and that's fine. Just enjoy the process and learn what you can get out of it, and and really embrace that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as a graduate, when you go into your first role, it's sometimes really easy to self-criticize when you make it when you make a mistake. But like a lot of the time, the people around you, they expect you to expect you to make mistakes.
Yeah,
And you shouldn't really beat yourself too much up about that. You should kind of just continue on and take it as improvement. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's you've got to be constructive. You've got to look and say, okay, I'm going to give it my best crack in that, but I know that we'll get this alpha prototype back, and there's going to be a whole bunch of issues, and that's fine. That's what they're for.
Yeah.
Getting through that. What's what you just hope is that you found the lows before it gets to production.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's a bad day.
You've been in industrial design for many years. You've been in the industry for many years. What major changes have you absorbed over that time that you'd like to speak to?
Look, there's the changes with the tools, and then I think there's the changes with information. So the really obvious one is CAD. Very fortunate. There was a small window in history where my generation got to study at university with both pre-internet and post-internet, and I got to do work pre-CAD and post-CAD. So I did one job that got to production using inked up tracing film type manual drawings. Really glad it was only one, but I got to do a full project on that, and got to do some projects that went to production with 2D CAD. And now it's all 3D CAD. So I've got to see that transition go through, and so that was really interesting. No longer have a drawing board on my desk. Still draw a lot. On the information side, early on my career, pre-internet, spent a lot more time on the phone because you're wanting to do something and you just need to talk to someone who can tell you about it. And so you just be calling up factories and suppliers and saying, hi, I'm trying to design something out of this. How do I do that? What do I have to consider? And just lots of time on the phone trying to find things and going and talking to people. And that was really good. Whereas now you want, here, design this piece out of sheet metal. And go, make sure it'll work with a press brake. And the person goes, what's a press brake? Oh, YouTube it. And you can, within a very short period of time, you get so much context. Whereas that used to be on the phone, go out, have a look, talk to them. Human side's still really important, but just that access to information that's happened over the last 30 years, and it just continues to amplify. There's been enormous changes there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm in my role as a in science manufacturing, it's still quite a lot of 2D. Like it's always not worth it to go into 2D. But I've actually found it really interesting because I feel like when I'm in 2D, I have to really think about how I'm going to explain something visually. Whereas with SolidWorks, you just like click on a new view, to show a detailed view or a section view, and it's easy. But having to think about that process of how am I actually going to explain this to someone, I feel like will long term improve the way I look at my technical drawings.
Yeah, understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose that's kind of the same. Like back in the day, it was. Well, I mean, I do it with Illustrator now, but back in the day, you were doing it with pen and paper, and you had the same kind of principle. You had to kind of think about what's the easiest way to explain this to someone.
Oh, and planning out how you're going to set up your page before you, because you can't just move it around. It's like, now where am I putting things? It was, like, and as a result, the speed to produce drawings has just become so much quicker. Which is great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Have you survived manufacturing in Australia? How has the organization continued on, survived, and flourished?
Few things there. The owners of Intellidesign are really brave. Really brave. They've invested heavily in software systems, and just a lot of tenacity. So if I speak to each of those, so on the bravery side, they've always been prepared to take on a project. And very open and transparently with the customer, saying, hey, look, we haven't designed a thing like this before, but you know what? We're prepared to take it on and go on a journey with you. And similar for the right customers and the right project, the owners have been prepared to take a risk. And so they go, you know what? We will make a significant contribution to the design, development, tooling costs for this project. So we'll really support the development and design of this project. But on the flip side, we want to be the manufacturer. So you're linking your design effort in with your long-term manufacturing. It creates this very entwined partnership. And it means that we have an enormous vested interest in the projects, because if the projects don't succeed, then we don't get our revenue. And we don't do it for every project. But because of that, it means you get these incredibly close relationships with your customers, and in design, customer relationships are so much about trust. And you build up these relationships. You go through the challenges together. And you face the hurdles along the way, but they're shared problems. And so being prepared to do that, certainly being part of the organization's build-up. The other one is investment in, systems. So we talk about the company having three big assets. We've got building facility with lots of equipment. Sort of on screen here, this is like about a quarter of the site. We've got a whole bunch of really smart, committed, really good people. And then the third thing is that we have a custom enterprise management system, which has been built up over the full life of the company. And the feedback we get from that, we get audited pretty regularly, pretty heavily by large organizations, particularly from the defense space and medical space. And we always get extremely positive feedback on how we run and operate our organisation and the controls that we've got in place. And so that investment by the organisation over time has paid off.
Yeah, that's great. We need more organizations like Intellidesign in Australia. Like we need more manufacturing back, you know.
Oh, look, I wish I could remember where I read it, and I'm no economist, but when you look at the flow-on benefit from an industry into other support industries and other local businesses, the flow-on effect from manufacturing to other businesses is enormous. Is enormous. So some sectors it's very little, but manufacturing there is enormous on spread because we start building here. Okay, we start leaning on local suppliers. So we don't do any injection molding or machining or metal folding in-house. We outsource the individual parts, which means that we're buying parts from suppliers all around the country and overseas. And it also means that as we're raising the bar on how to do things in terms of quality and tracking and traceability, we're taking our subcontractors along that journey with us. And and as you're working in a facility, even the things you do in your facility, you're employing local builders to help, as you upgrade and do things in your facility. There's so much ongoing spend that goes out into the local community with manufacturing. It's I guess the loss of the motor car industry in Australia is a big blow.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think it's something that's going to come back in greater swing to how it is currently in the future?
I don't think come back. But I'm optimistic about new things coming up. Yeah. So if someone said, we're going to open a car plant tomorrow in Australia, it's like, oh, I'm not sure you'd be able to pull that one off. But yeah, look, and we've seen, credit where credit's due. The Australian government's decided to spend a lot of money on defence at the moment. A few years ago, this general uplift in defence capability started. And one of the things which, although I disagree with a whole bunch of things the government does on this particular issue, Turnbull government said, we're going to mandate that the big prime contractors have a high Australian industry content. And as a result, there's lots of that work being done here and in the country. And we've seen firsthand the jobs created, the small businesses that have grown, the capabilities that come up through lots and lots of local businesses because of that flow down. And so when big decisions are made like that, then they have a really positive impact.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was watching this video the other day about America, where they were talking about how America is trying to start like a manufacturing revolution around 3D printing specifically, where they have like this kind of like hold on it as a country. And I feel like maybe that could be something like what Australia does, where some new technology comes out, maybe it's 3D printing, maybe it's something else. And they're not necessarily bringing back manufacturing capabilities that they currently had. We're implementing new ones because Australia is a very easy adaptable country. We can easily kind of divert in some direction because we're a lot smaller, and maybe that'll be the future.
Maybe. Look, it's I think there's lots of possibilities in that sector for Australia. When you look at the volumes that we're well suited to manufacturing and the kinds of projects that we can take on, and there's lots of really smart people and innovative people in the country. And embracing new processes and new technologies like that, then there's certainly opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely. As you've mentioned, IntelliDesign operates in more of a technical aspect opposed to maybe more visual aspects of some design. What are the challenges with that, and like what are the benefits, and how do you see the difference of working in that role versus
Yeah.
more conceptual role?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, we do plenty of conceptual stuff. I'll just grab a product off the line here. One of
Oh,
the guys has worked on. Um, so we get a mixture. Um, One thing about our products is that, and I've got the utmost respect for people who work in the consumer sphere.
mm,
Human beings are fickle. We're fickle creatures. Um, no one's deciding to buy an Intellidesign product or not based on an article on a shelf.
mm,
Um, when someone's deciding to buy our products, they're buying it usually at scale,
mm,
and um, and it's never a want. It's always a need that they've got with
mm,
what they're solving. But having said that, aesthetics play a big part in what we do. Um, uh, but reliability is definitely king.
mm.
Reliability and usability, and then the aesthetics will flow after that. Um, the I think that we're designing a product. We put significant effort into how the finished article is going to present,
Mm,
and how those technical details are. It might be around seals. It might be around how we're addressing heating and cooling. It could be around vibration issues and shock issues and dealing with lots of ice, or heat's always a big one. So when we're styling up a product, we'll be looking at the technical needs of the product
mm,
and then driving our styling based on that. So it's I'd like to think it's complementary, because if your product is visually messy,
mm,
then I don't think it inspires confidence
mm.
from the person who's going to use that, because someone picks it up, and they will see, they'll go, you know what, this, they mightn't consciously register, but there's something about it, they won't have that same confidence.
Mm.
And when your products are all about reliability, that's going to detract from people's confidence to put your thing out in the field.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose in the space you guys work in, it's very much the visual has to communicate the, almost the fundamental value of durability and reliability, and it needs to be rugged. It needs to look like it's going to withstand those
Yeah,
specific that comes before anything else. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. If we've got a thing going on the side of a haul truck, it's got to look like it's going to survive an angry miner with a gurney after a long day,
Yeah.
because they'll go at it.
You mentioned before you used to work in consultancies. How do you see the different experience as a designer working in more of a consultancy vibe, more of a consultancy environment versus in-house manufacturing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're a little unique in that we are doing design work for outside parties, but we're manufacturing, so we're in that middle zone.
Mm,
Um, there's a few companies around Australia who do that. And I mean, the great thing in consultancy is you get the high turnover of work,
mm,
and you get to see a lot of different things. They're fun environments. I always found the pressure in consultancies fairly elevated.
mm,
And in the consulting environment, um, because you're always billing for time. Once the budget's exhausted on a product, it's gone, and you can't ever get that back. And so if you go, you know what, this product really needs a few extra hours on this feature here, and the person, 99% of people won't see it, or 90% of people won't see it, but the installer, they will appreciate if we do this. Person on the line building it, they'll appreciate if we do this little detail. And they can be, that level of detail can be challenging to charge for in a consulting environment, I found. Whereas when you've got a revenue stream tied in with the manufacturer, you'll get a return on going that little bit further. So I've always enjoyed always found that you can go deeper into the detail. Whereas in the consulting environment, it was always much more cost effective for the customer's own internal team to kind of take ownership of a product by that point, and they're getting down to the detail, just because the costs of going through consulting type environments.
Yeah, I've definitely found that even so far in my job, like we get a lot of briefs, a lot of visuals from consultancies, and we prepare them for manufacturing, and a lot of the time, like so many things weren't considered, but it is ultimately because they have a limitation. They can't really go into the details, and also they don't necessarily know the final processes as much as the people who work in the manufacturing, because quite often it'll be what they think might be easy for us isn't necessarily easy. It's an interesting experience being in that middle way.
Yeah. Look, and sometimes it's really it works really well, because at a conceptual level, you want to be getting through your ideas quickly and churning through, coming up with lots of ideas and discarding most of them. And consultancies are really good, and they also, they give you a great fresh perspective on something. So certainly, I've got an enormous respect for the work that comes out of them.
I mean, ultimately, all these different things factor into good design.
Yeah.
Tackle it any way you want, but it all is good design ultimately.
Yeah.
What do you look for in industrial design? What do you look for in industrial design graduates? A lot of people who graduated with me, they're in that kind of boat, trying to get a job. What tips would you give them on how they
don't give up, keep knocking on doors, keep trying. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard getting your first break. So things we look for, advice I'd give, do anything. Like, if you have any opportunity to do some work where something you're designing is being realized in some way, then embrace it and do it, and give it your absolute best shot. And look, and if you're not, you don't have an opportunity to do something for somebody else, then do your own project. Make a letterbox, and whatever your favorite thing to do is, create a thing for that, make it, try it, get stuff wrong, learn, do it again. I remember a graduate I hired, he helped a friend build a coffee shop. And he came in and I said, tell me about it. How did it go? What went wrong? He went, so many things. And it was actually really good, because it's like, that shows that, you're learning. When someone doesn't have problems, it's like, well, you weren't really in there doing it. So my advice is, make things. 3D printing has made it so much more accessible to make stuff, do stuff. So get your hands dirty and show that and present that. Any personal project that someone's doing, for me, in a portfolio is just as valuable as projects you've done at uni.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What are some skills and attitudes which make for a good designer in the modern world?
Drawing.
Drawing, yeah.
Um, we don't do, we'll different projects, different times. We'll have to do some high quality renderings. But the drawing that gets used most is as a communication tool.
Mm.
So my normal state of working is in front of me. I've got a block of butter paper that I'm sketching on. CAD's open, and they're both happening because I can think through a detail 50 times faster on paper quickly than I can modeling it up and changing it, modeling it up, changing it. Whereas in paper, I'm just going try this, try this, try this, and you get to the result. I sat in a meeting with Rob Geddes one day, and a client was talking through a problem, and he had kind of an idea, and he had this thought bubble in his head, but he couldn't draw. And so I watched him tease this thought out of the customer's head. And he was there drawing, and I couldn't work out what he was drawing. And then he put in a couple of ground lines, and I realized he'd been sketching in perspective upside down. And like this thing popped out of the page. And the client's face was all of a sudden this idea that had been wrestling around inside his head, he saw on the page in front of him. He was just thrilled. And takeaway from me on that was that every time you're in front of a client, draw something because they can't do that. And what it does is they often they've usually got really good ideas. They've got really good thoughts, and they're particularly if they're a specialist in their industry, they really know what's going on. And if you can sit there and sketch in front of them, it's like you're capturing their thoughts. That's a really, really, I think, important quality is to draw the knowledge out of the client, out of the customer.
Yeah.
Interpersonal skills certainly help. Being able to, because it's all about trust. So building that trust, and it also plays a lot into the team and working with others in other disciplines. So having those skills to interact and work through problems together. I think that's really important. I think sometimes as designers we sometimes we'll hear it's like, oh, we're the only ones who can solve the problem. We're the only ones who've got the ideas. But although sometimes, we have great ideas and there's also a lot of other people in other sectors with really interesting background that will come out with interesting ideas, and you get that diversity in the input. And worked with on one project with a doctor, and he specialized in A&E. So lots of high pressure decisions in really challenging situations on a daily basis. And we'd be in meetings, and it'd be a complex problem to rationalize and think through. He was so good at rationalizing through a problem on how we tackle a thing. And it didn't matter whether it was a scheduling issue, whether it was supply, like he was just really good at sorting problems. And it was because of his, the diverse background, where he'd come from and what he had to deal with. So
yeah, definitely. What things do you enjoy the most about being a designer in this specific field and in general?
Good question. I personally, I really enjoy being in production or in the field when someone's building a product and it's going together well. And for them to build it and put it together is a pleasurable thing. to do, because it just goes together and it works and everything's in its place. And I really enjoy seeing that on a bench where it's a thing that was designed 10, 15 years ago. And it's still working and serving its purpose and its markets really well. And also being out in the field when you see someone take your product out of a box and do an install. The install goes really well, and it's good to, in situ it works well and it does what they want. And I always get an immense satisfaction out of that you see something going well. First prototypes, the most fun part, because it's okay if things are wrong. You've been working on a thing for so long, it's when you kind of see it really come together. It's always really exciting. First production runs, probably most anxious, most nervous. Even though you've been through lots of verification testing. First production is always an anxious moment. Collaboration, get a lot of joy working with others in different areas in different countries. It can be really fun working with people and we've got different cultural ways of doing things, and we're fortunate enough. We've got some customers from Europe, customers from the US, Australia, lots in Australia and New Zealand, and and they're all got unique things, and that's always enjoyable.
You mentioned you work with a lot of people from different disciplines. You have engineers, as you said, industrial designers. How do you, as the manager, best coordinate your team of different disciplines, and how do you help those people interact for the better?
Yeah, sure. So we have project managers who will run the team and run the project. And so there's lots of juggling on resources. My particular role in those, in projects going through, is to, on projects you need a bit of tension. You need someone coming from a time and a financial side, pushing deadlines, pushing dates, pushing deliverables. But you want the person who's pushing the design and what the design's going to do and the level that the design's going to get to. You want that to be a separate person. Otherwise, you've got a conflict of interest. And so my role is to be on projects, is to be pushing on the design side and saying, I know the project manager wants it tomorrow. That's good. What's the best we can do within that time frame? And as far as across disciplines, I guess it's not about telling people what to do. It's about helping them work through that themselves. And so, I don't sit down with an industrial designer or a hardware engineer and say, no, you tell him this and you tell him that and you tell her that and you tell her this. It's not about that. It's more about having conversations. Okay, what information is important for us to share? What are the touch points between what we're doing? And I guess promoting and fostering those really strong relationships between the team members. And getting them as a team to focus on the outputs that have got to come out so that we can get a part made, to get a product together.
That's great. Just to wrap it up, thank you so much for coming on. And
that's all right. That's a pleasure.
To get your perspective on everything.
That's all right.
Maybe just if you could reminisce on the beginning of your career. You're maybe at the same state of me, just starting out. What advice would you give to your younger self that you really think would have helped you along the way?
I think it's a really fortunate career to have. Because a lot of people don't get to see change or influence or a tangible result for the work they do. So it's quite a privilege to do that. I also think it's really good to embrace your background and your experiences. I remember in one of your podcasts you mentioned you're a disability support worker, and have you found that's influenced any of your work and what you've done and how you approach things and your view on things? I mean, that's a challenging thing to do.
Not as much yet, but I think it definitely changes the way I look at the world, which I think long term will have a benefit. Like I look at things and think like, obviously no consideration was made for someone with disabilities in this case. Like sometimes I perceive this, and I think having that perspective can be very beneficial. Like you don't even need to necessarily know the specific details of every disability and like the needs of everyone. Just having that kind of perception that there are people out there who need considerations.
Yeah.
Like knowing to look for the right information for those people. I think that's beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, that awareness. Yeah. So I guess I'd be saying it's like lean on your background and your experiences, and always embrace a chance to get more experiences and go from there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, Jonathan.
That's all right. Pleasure, Raymond.
Yeah, and keep in touch.
We'll do, and all the best for the podcast. It's been really good. I've enjoyed them all.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
All right, cheers. Thank you.
See you later.